Celtic fans, you know how it is. There is never a quiet day around our club, because even when the matches are done, the stories just keep coming. And right now, there is one name that is stirring up plenty of conversation. A player who has already split opinion, but could end up being a really important figure in Brendan Rodgers' plans. We're talking about Kelechi Iheanacho, and the way Joe Hart has shed light on a part of his journey that not many of us actually knew about. When you hear it, it makes you look at the lad a little differently. Joe Hart has always had a unique place in the Celtic story of recent years. He arrived at a point when many thought his career was drifting away, bouncing from one English side to another without really finding stability. Yet under Ange Postecoglou, he reinvented himself. He became a leader in that dressing room. And by the time he hung up his gloves in 2024, he was being spoken about as one of the most beloved Celtic keepers of the modern era. The guy might not be pulling on the gloves anymore, but whenever he speaks about football, there is a weight to his words, because he's lived it. He's been through the highs and the lows. So when Joe Hart talks about Iheanacho and what he went through earlier in his career, you pay attention. During coverage of Celtic's European tie with Red Star Belgrade, Hart opened up with some pretty fascinating details. He remembered what it was like when Iheanacho first came to England as a young lad, completely new to that level of football and honestly, completely unknown to the dressing room. According to Hart, Manuel Pellegrini, who was the Manchester City manager at the time, believed in the kid and put him into the squad. But belief from the manager is one thing. You still have to prove yourself every day on the training ground. And that's where the story gets interesting. Hart admitted that Iheanacho actually missed a few training sessions. Not because he was injured, not because he was lazy, but because he wasn't quite switched on to what it meant to be at that level. He didn't quite understand the demands, the constant intensity, the fact that you're being judged every single day, not just at the weekend. It's the kind of thing that can make or break a young player, because some never adjust. But Iheanacho, in time, did. He eventually clicked into gear, had some big moments with City, got his move to Leicester, and began to carve out a more serious career for himself. Hart's words painted the picture of a player who had to learn through the hard knocks. He spoke almost with a sense of understanding, like he'd seen plenty of young talents lose their way before. He even added a personal touch, almost like he was speaking directly to Iheanacho, reminding him that every footballer goes through rough patches. Every player has that spell where you wonder if you're good enough or if you can cope with the environment. And in Iheanacho's case, those early months and years were tough, but he eventually found his feet. Now, fast forward to today, and we've got Iheanacho wearing the green and white, trying to make his mark at Celtic Park. And isn't it funny how things work out? Back in those early days, the idea of him ever landing in Glasgow would have seemed far-fetched. But football has a strange way of circling back around. He might not have been the first-choice signing, with names like Kasper Dolberg being chased earlier in the window, but now he's here, and he's already giving Rodgers something to think about in terms of his attacking options. The most telling sign? He has already found himself benched at times, which says more about Celtic's growing attacking depth than about his lack of ability. Remember, a few months ago, plenty of supporters were raging at the club for not bringing in enough reinforcements up front. With Adam Ida gone and Kyogo Furuhashi also moving on, it felt like we were left light in attack. Yet Iheanacho's arrival, even after the window officially closed, has eased that pressure slightly. He's not the full answer, but if he can settle quickly and start contributing consistently, that's one less problem for Rodgers to solve. Of course, the warning from Hart's story still lingers. There is no chance Iheanacho will be allowed to skip sessions or drift in and out here in Glasgow. The standards at Lennoxtown are high, and the fans demand even more. Every player has to earn their place, and especially in a side like Celtic where the margin for error is so small, you don't get the luxury of not quite with it spells. Rodgers will demand full focus, and if Iheanacho wants to build a legacy here, he'll need to show that he's learned from those early missteps at Manchester City. What adds more fuel to the discussion is how the squad has been shaped by the summer's transfer business. A couple of the other new faces, like Jamie Simpson-Pusey, who has come on loan from Manchester City, and Shin Yamada, haven't even been registered for the Europa League group stage squad. That decision has raised eyebrows because, in total, 4 of the summer signings didn't make the cut for Europe. Fans are asking the obvious question: What was the plan behind the recruitment if several players can't even be considered when the big nights come around? This frustration ties into a wider criticism we've all heard loud and clear, that the Celtic board didn't really back Rodgers properly in the market to build a squad ready to compete with Europe's elite. You look at the fixture list, and you see the trip to Belgrade, and you can't help but feel the gap between what Celtic supporters dream of and what the club is structurally prepared for. That's why there's been so much noise from the terraces, because the supporters aren't just demanding domestic dominance anymore. They want progress in Europe, and to get there you need a squad with depth and quality across every position. And that's where Iheanacho's presence becomes symbolic. He's not just another signing, he's the test case. Can Celtic identify a player who had promise, maybe lost his way a little, and turn him into someone who thrives in Glasgow? Can Rodgers take the raw attributes, refine them, and turn him into a weapon for both domestic battles and those massive European nights? If the answer is yes, then Iheanacho could quickly go from being a stopgap to being one of the smartest pieces of business Celtic have done in recent memory. When you listen to Celtic supporters right now, there is a mix of excitement and frustration swirling in the air. On one hand, the arrival of players like Iheanacho gives hope that the team can discover unexpected heroes, men who can write new stories in green and white. On the other, the bigger picture of how this squad has been assembled leaves plenty of questions unanswered. And it is those questions that dominate the conversations in pubs, on the supporters' buses, and across social media. The truth is that Celtic are always judged by two standards. At home in Scotland, the expectation is dominance. Winning the league isn't seen as an achievement, it is seen as a minimum requirement. Cups are nice, trebles are celebrated, but if you fall short domestically, the pressure is immediate and severe. Then there's the European stage, which is where Celtic fans measure the true progress of the club. It is not enough to just take part anymore. The hunger is to see nights at Celtic Park where the team can stand toe-to-toe with the Giants, not just for one match, but across an entire group campaign. And that's where the frustration bites hardest, because when you look at the squad registration for Europe and you see fresh signings missing out, it feels like the club have tripped over their own shoelaces before even kicking a ball. Supporters know exactly what is required at this level, because they've lived through it before. They've seen sides that were fearless in Europe, who took the game to Barcelona, who toppled giants under the lights in Glasgow. They've also seen years when the team has looked undercooked, when the gulf in quality has been so obvious that it was painful to watch. And right now, many feel that Rodgers hasn't been given the full set of tools to bridge that gap. For a manager of his caliber, who has returned with the ambition of cementing his legacy, that lack of backing feels like a gamble by the board. The noise around the Red Star Belgrade clash proves it. Fans are not just nervous about the match, they are angry at the thought of going into a European group campaign already handicapped by squad decisions. They ask why the board chased names like Dolberg all summer without closing the deal, why others came through the door only to sit idle during the most important fixtures, and why Rodgers has to make do with patchwork options instead of having a clear strategy. And while the players who are eligible will give everything, the fans know that effort alone is not always enough at this level. You need depth, you need competition in every position, and you need quality that can hurt opponents when the margins are slim. That's why Iheanacho's story feels so crucial. His success or failure here could become a symbol of the entire transfer window. If he thrives, the narrative softens, and Rodgers looks like a manager capable of molding diamonds from rough edges. If he struggles, the criticism of the recruitment department will grow even louder, and the board will have nowhere to hide. It is not just about goals or assists. It's about proving that the club can still identify players who can rise to the occasion under the pressure of Celtic Park and the expectations of one of the most demanding fan bases in the game. And let's not forget, Celtic supporters have long memories. They remember when signings were made for the sake of numbers, not quality. They remember seasons when the squad was bloated with players who never quite fit, and the wage bill was heavy with names who contributed little. That is the nightmare scenario, and that is why every signing is scrutinized now. Fans don't just celebrate arrivals, they immediately ask, can this guy handle Europe? Can he handle the pressure? Can he improve the team today, not in 2 years? Rodgers himself knows that scrutiny all too well. He is a manager who has delivered success in Scotland before, who has seen his teams dominate domestically, but who has also felt the sting of criticism for failing to make a real mark in Europe. This second spell is a chance to rewrite that chapter, but only if he is armed with the right squad. That's why you sense some frustration even in his own tone when he speaks about the market. He doesn't throw anyone under the bus, but you can hear in the pauses, in the careful choice of words, that he expected more backing. And in the high-stakes environment of Celtic, every hint of dissatisfaction is picked up instantly by the supporters. Now, as the focus shifts to Belgrade, the team walks into a test that is about more than just 90 minutes of football. It is about proving that Celtic are not just passengers in this competition, but contenders with pride. The Serbian champions are no easy opponent. Their stadium is a cauldron, and the atmosphere will be hostile. For Celtic, it's a chance to show resilience, to show that despite the flaws in recruitment and the questions hanging over the squad, there is still enough quality, enough belief, and enough fight to deliver a performance worthy of the shirt. And here is where the heart of the Celtic support comes into play. Because no matter how angry or frustrated the fans get about the board, once the whistle blows, they will be behind the players. They will demand intensity, they will demand passion, and they will not accept anything less than a team that gives every ounce of energy for the badge. This unity between stands and pitch is what has always made Celtic special, and it is what gives the players no room for excuses. You cannot hide at Celtic, not in front of those supporters, not under the floodlights in Europe. For Iheanacho, it could be the defining moment of his early days in Glasgow. If he finds the net, if he contributes meaningfully in these group games, he instantly writes himself into the trust of the fans. If he looks off the pace, the doubts will multiply quickly. That's the reality of playing for Celtic, and it's what separates those who thrive here from those who fade away. Joe Hart's words about missing training sessions back in his City days serve as a reminder of what cannot happen here. Because at Celtic, if you switch off for even a week, you lose your spot, and the supporters will notice instantly. The bigger picture, though, stretches beyond one player. The fans are sending a message, clear as day, to the board. This is not good enough. Domestic dominance alone will not silence the critics anymore. Celtic want to be respected in Europe, to walk into nights like the one in Belgrade with genuine belief rather than false hope. Until that happens, every misstep in recruitment, every player left off the European squad list, and every underwhelming performance will be held up as evidence that the club's ambition does not match the supporters' dreams. And that tension, that push and pull between the boardroom and the terraces, is what makes this season feel so pivotal. Rodgers can only work with what he has, and if he pulls a deep European run out of this group, it will be one of the finest achievements of his career. But if things fall flat, the pressure will not just be on him. It will be squarely on those who built the squad and left him without the full armory needed for these battles. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. In a move that has sent shockwaves through Scottish football, whispers from within Celtic Park suggest that Brendan Rodgers, the man who has long been the guiding force behind the hoops, is preparing to hang up his managerial boots at the club. Though nothing has been confirmed by the club, sources close to the Northern Irishman hint that Rodgers has made a firm decision, one that could see him walk away from the helm that has brought so much success in recent years. Rodgers' tenure at Celtic has been marked by dominance, with multiple league titles and cup victories under his belt, and yet, it seems the ever-ambitious manager might be yearning for a fresh challenge beyond the familiar confines of Glasgow. Insiders say the decision hasn't come lightly. Talks behind closed doors reportedly stretched for weeks, with Rodgers weighing the immense legacy he would leave against the lure of something new, somewhere that might test his managerial mettle in ways Scotland simply cannot. The corridors of Celtic Park are said to be buzzing with speculation. Players, staff, and fans alike are reportedly trying to piece together the clues left in interviews and press conferences over the past months. Some suggest a top-flight club from England or even a return to the Premier League could be on the cards, though no official contact has been revealed. Meanwhile, supporters are gripped with a mix of disbelief and excitement, debating whether the Hoops can sustain their domestic dominance without the man who has become synonymous with their recent golden era. Analysts and pundits are already lining up their predictions, with some insisting that Rodgers' departure, if true, could trigger one of the most dramatic managerial shifts in Scottish football in years. Others, however, caution that until Celtic themselves confirm anything, it remains nothing more than a tantalizing rumor, albeit one that has the potential to rewrite the football landscape north of the border. For now, all eyes remain fixed on Celtic Park, where every gesture, every interview, every press statement is being scrutinized for signs of what could be the end of an era. Brendan Rodgers, the man who brought hope, flair, and a relentless winning mentality to the hoops, might be ready to step away. And if the whispers prove true, Scottish football will never look the same again. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.